Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adriana.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are Uplifting Positive Stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, glad to be here for another podcast recording. It feels like the last several weeks, I feel like I've said this before in the podcast, but like it's just been go.
It's been very, very
crazy.
busy.
A lot of good things, but just busy, active, and really hopeful now, knock on wood here, that it starts to kind of simmer for at least a little bit of time, like get into just a normal regular routine for at least for a little bit, and then you can kind of like reset before, having lots of things to do again.
Once the summer gets busy again. Yeah, it's been busy. We just shot our first music video ever, so that was really fun. And then we also just got back from a trip with some families. That was super, super fun.
And you had a bachelorette trip before
that. Went on a bachelorette
with
trip with my best friend for her wedding, and it was awesome. Yeah, we went to Universal Orlando for that, which was super, super fun. We were the weirdo Minnesotans that packed shorts thinking it was going to be very hot, and then ended up being in the 40s and 50s the entire trip, and we didn't have the clothing for that, so we were shivering, but we were Minnesota strong in the midst of that, and it was a blast.
You still probably did better than many other people there that aren't coming from the north,
Yeah, that's true. Everyone else was wearing like coats and stuff. We felt very out of place, but it was a blast. We had a lot of fun. Like I mentioned in the past episode, we had bought matching shirts that had like house bachelorette, and then the bride said, "I solemnly swear I'm getting married," and it was cute going to Wizarding World of Harry Potter wearing those and stuff. It was really fun. So yeah, it was a great time. But going into today's episode is all about simple acts of kindness. So very similar to a lot of other episodes we've had, but I've just found so many little short stories that were just super, super sweet, and I really wanted to share them, but they're just random little things that happen and stuff. And so sometimes I think those kind of get glanced over just because they're so simple, and they're so small. But those stories can just really hit you in the feels and can really remind us that there's a lot of good out there, and look for those little things, and don't underestimate how impactful those little things can be in the long run, because those little things could be something really big to somebody else. And I know we've talked about that a lot on this podcast, but I think it bears reminding because it's such an important thing, those little things, and being mindful of watching for those things in your life when people do those for you, and also looking for opportunities to do them for other people as well. So with that, we have a bunch of little stories, and we'll just dive right in. So today's first story comes from the subreddit Random Acts of Kindness, and it is titled, "Our friend had her foot amputated and is in the hospital going through rehab."
Oh boy.
So the story says, "I decided to make her a care basket. I had $21 and headed to the Dollar Tree. I picked out a card and inside was $15. Because of someone's generosity, I was able to make her a great basket. People can be so thoughtful. Thank you, Dollar Tree stranger." And then someone commented on that response saying, "I stashed cash in children's coat pockets in Walmart."
Oh, so that could look kind of sketchy though, so be careful with that. I mean, it's a nice idea for sure.
It's a cool idea, but yeah, I just think what a cool idea. And there was a lot of people that I saw in the comments who were like, "Oh yeah, I do this too," or I saw someone that did this for me. Like I went and bought a card and I found cash in it at my grocery store or whatever. So this is actually kind of a common act of kindness that I wasn't aware people were doing. And that's such a cool idea to put some cash into the cards people purchase. And that gives people money to be able to buy somebody a better gift than maybe they were planning on being able to get. So I thought that was a really short story, but a really cool idea, and something that I read and I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I thought that was super neat.
I want to make it clear that the whole idea is still a good idea and stuff. I was just more so like, maybe don't like reach into people's pockets in general.
No. Kids' coats that are on the rack.
Oh, I was picturing like kids walking with their parents, like going up to some kid and like,
no.
That's the part I was like, see, this is why it's good that we talked about this, because my brain heard pictured literally a child walking with the coat on them, and then someone reaching their hand.
That would be a little sketchy, I feel.
Yeah.
But no, imagine if you purchased a kid's coat and they brought it home and then they found cash in the pocket, especially for a kid when you're saving up money as a kid. Like $5-10 is a lot of money for a kid, so it'd be really exciting. So it's like when you don't wear a coat for a really long time and then you like come back to the winter season and you put it on, you find some cash in your pocket that you would put there at one point and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a gift because I didn't know I had this extra cash there.
It's like free money.
It's like free money, even though it's yours.
From your past self.
Yeah, exactly. So going on to our next story, this one comes from the subreddit Ask Reddit, and the question was, what's a random act of kindness someone did for you that you'll never forget, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant? So here we go. I was in kindergarten and we were visiting my grandparents in another state during summer break. My mom took us to the public pool for a fun day out, but I was lonely because I didn't know any other children there and none would play with me. My mom was busy with my baby sibling and my grandparents could not physically go in the pool. A teenage girl sized up the situation when she saw me sitting alone by the pool with a toy. She asked my mom if she could teach me to dive. My mom said yes. The teenager made sure we were in sight of my mom the entire time. She threw nickels into the pool for me to pick up on my dives as we gradually moved into deeper water. I had so much fun and I really gained confidence in my swimming. At closing time, she showed me all of the nickels I collected and then took me to the vending machine to pick out a candy bar with my earnings. I would love to be able to thank her for her kindness. I've tried to pay it forward by keeping an eye out for the lonely kids that no one will play with.
And then found a golden ticket in the Hershey in the chocolate bar. Going to Willy Wonka's factory.
Oh my gosh. But isn't that sweet?
That's nice.
What a cool, it's a simple thing, but I think that's super cool that she, you know, maybe she could relate. Maybe when she was a young kid, she was a little more shy and didn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
You know, and was looking out for that. And so that's such a cool idea to be looking for that kind of thing. And what a cool idea to get that kid confident in learning how to swim too. What an awesome idea. So
and also when you're younger, you know, a teenager so grown up, you know, and
yeah,
that's like,
oh
whoa,
my
the
gosh,
cool kid is talking to me
with
and like hanging out with me, choosing to hang out with me. Whoa, that's makes you feel extra special.
Exactly.
Or it depends on the person, I guess.
I feel like that's mostly the case. Like there was well, she wasn't quite a teenager yet. She was definitely older than me, though. I think she was like 4 or 5 years older than me. A girl in my neighborhood that would come over and play with me and stuff. And I always thought she was just the coolest because, wow, this older kid's playing with me and stuff. And it was just awesome. So, yeah, I think it definitely can make a huge difference. So, what a cool idea. Super, super sweet. Another one from this exact same question on that same subreddit. This one says, I want to say it was 6th grade. I was approaching homelessness with my mom, and I just was really going through it. The water kept getting shut off for days. Mom was using me as a therapist. I really wasn't a kid anymore. I skipped the school book fair because why the heck would I go? My guidance counselor told me to check in with the school librarian that there was some paperwork I needed to pick up. She had left a $20 bill in an envelope for me to grab a book at the book fair. For the rest of the day, I was just able to be a kid. And I read my silly little origami Yoda book, and I didn't have to think about real life problems. I'll never forget it. Yeah.
That's really sad.
Right.
I feel like no kid should have to be their parent's therapist. You
Yeah.
know, I know that's not always just how life shakes out. People are imperfect, families are imperfect, you know, parents are imperfect sometimes, but like that's got to be hard.
Yeah.
You know, like because kids just should be kids to a certain extent.
Exactly.
So it's nice to have, even if it's like a small, like a drop in the bucket, still it's something, you know, to help out and help them just be a kid again, and even just in a small way.
Right. And yeah, so it was only $20 to that person, but obviously this made enough of an impact that.
Hey, when you're a kid, $20 is a lot of money.
Right. And that's a lot of books at a book fair.
You can buy you can maybe buy 2 things of eggs now, maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But, you know, for kids, that's usually, I guess I don't know what the ratio is for kid money to now.
That's fair.
For when we were kids, $20 was a lot.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah, I don't know how long ago for them being in 6th grade was, but the fact that they are, you know, remembering it enough to write a post about it, like, obviously it made a huge impact. And so, yeah, $20 to that person meant way more than $20 to them.
Which made me think of the previous story of the, you know, kindergartner, that they remember the story from kindergarten.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy how when you're a kid, those years are so formative, and so like little things like that can really stand out and can really shape the way that they think about the world. Like whether outside people are kind or outside people are terrible. Like, you know, it's weird how formative those years are in that way. So being somebody that looks out, especially for kids, but other people, adults too, looking out for people that maybe seem like they're going through it, because sometimes life can be just really rough for a certain period of time. And so looking out and those little gestures can really, really help when you're going through it. So
I don't remember anything from kindergarten.
Really?
So and nothing else. I'm impressed that they remember that kind of story.
Yeah.
In detail.
Yeah, exactly. On to our next story. So this one comes from the subreddit Random Acts of Kindness again. And this one is titled Candy for the Campfire Girls and Cookies for the Girl Scouts.
Sensing a theme here involving candy.
Yeah. So
candy and books.
Yeah, the little things. So this one says, way back around 1969-ish, I was in the Campfire Girls. They changed to just Campfire and allow boys these days, but back then it was girls only. If you aren't familiar with them, think Girl Scouts, similar to an after-school club. Anyway, we sold candy to raise money for our troop. I remember standing in front of the store with my friends and our leader trying to convince people to pay $1 for the box of chocolate candy, which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, that's a lot of chocolate.
I would look longingly at the candy, but I knew that there was no way I could afford to buy one of them. My family was poor, and I didn't have any allowance to save up to buy anything, so getting to eat one of those candies was not in my future at all. Along came a man who looked at the various options of candies and then asked us girls which one is the best. The other girls all agreed that the chocolate mints were the best choice. He said, if those are the best ones, then I want one of those. One girl took the money while another girl handed him the box of candy. Then he handed the box of candy back to us and said, these are for you to enjoy. We were shocked and then elated. I'm pretty sure we squealed our thank you to him as we tore open the package and quickly finished off all of the candy. I decided that someday when I grew up, I'd do the same thing for someone else. It has been over 50 years, and I still remember how much that small gesture meant to me. Now, when I see Girl Scouts selling cookies, I walk up to them and I ask which ones are the best. Then I buy a box of the best and give it to them to enjoy. Every time I do this, it reminds me of how good it felt to be the receiver, but it feels even better to be the giver.
Kind of a pay it forward in a generational sense.
Right? Isn't that such a cool idea?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I love little stories like this where it's something that's like, that's such a cool idea, because we often have been, especially right now, I think they're in the process of selling them.
I think we're in Girl Scout cookie season right now.
Cookie
so
season.
if you're listening to this and you feel inspired by this, do it and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, because I think it's only like $6 a box, which I'll be honest, $6 for a box of cookies is a little expensive, but you know, for Girl Scouts, it's a huge deal to them when you buy their cookies.
I mean, that sounds better than $1 back in 1969, weirdly enough, because that's a lot.
That's
At least
fair.
I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. But I just remember when I was a Girl Scout going door to door and asking people to buy cookies, and there was like little prizes you could win if you hit certain amounts and stuff. And it does, like, it really makes a huge impact when people buy the cookies from the Girl Scouts. I know that for a fact, because I remember even my neighbor he was so supportive come Girl Scout season, be like, make sure you stop by when you're gonna be selling those cookies, and he would always buy a ton of boxes. I mean, I'm sure he probably liked them and stuff, of course, too, but I'm sure it seemed like he just really appreciated being able to like make me happy by buying my cookies and stuff. Yeah. It was really, really sweet.
I would think it's more about being supportive with the bonus of, but I also get cookies. Because I don't feel like they're like the best cookies in the world.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you're being supportive and you're also getting cookies.
Yes, exactly.
So it's kind of like a big win and then like another win along with that.
Right. But yeah, so it definitely makes a huge difference when you do that. And so to give it back to them on top of that, like, here, enjoy these cookies while you're sitting here at your booth selling cookies.
Yeah, paying it forward.
It's just such an awesome idea. So I love these little inspirational ideas.
And that may inspire them to do it themselves, you know, in the future. So again, it's like
50 years later.
Paying it forward in a generational sense that could continue through the future as well.
Super
hopefully.
Cool. All right, on to our next story. So this one comes from Casual Conversation, and it is titled, What's the Best Random Act of Kindness You've Ever Received? And it says, It could be something as small as a stranger holding the door open for you, or as big as a friend surprising you with a thoughtful gift. Maybe someone paid for your coffee in the drive-thru line, or a neighbor shoveled your driveway after a snowstorm. Or maybe it's something that happened years ago, but you still remember it fondly. I truly believe that kindness has the power to make a huge impact on our lives, even if it's just a small gesture. And I think that by sharing our stories, we can inspire others to spread kindness as well. And so someone responded to that saying, I can only think of today's. I work at a local family-owned hardware store. One of my regular customers bought a bunch of Fannie Mae chocolates as it's Valentine's tomorrow. I helped him get the best deal, pointed out the buy one, get one free, etc. He asked me what my favorites were because he was tired of choosing, and women know chocolate. I'm a Seattle native, and I told him I love the mint meltaways because they reminded me of home. It's been a crap weekend. My parents have COVID, and my mom, vaxxed and boosted, was doing really bad. Couple of trips to the ER, so not much sleep and lots of worry. I took my guy up to the cashier, and I went back to see who to help next. Next thing I know, he's giving me a box of my favorites because everyone needs a little home sometimes. He had no idea how bad my weekend was. I was so touched. I had to go take a break to cry. It was such a sweet, sweet gesture that I really needed.
Mm-hmm.
Again with the chocolates, but you know, it's little things like that.
And again, like there's no way they knew what was going on,
right,
in their life and such.
Yeah.
But they, you never know when a random act of kindness could have a major impact depending on what's going on in their life.
Change your perspective, because when we have a more positive perspective, sometimes that can kind of end a spiral, because once bad things are happening, especially when like you're dealing with something of that severity, it can color your entire view of everything going on, not just that incident, but it can make it feel like everything's terrible, the world is terrible. And so giving that little glimmer of light can seem so much brighter when you're going through something like that. Yeah. So on to our next story. This one comes from True Off My Chest, and it is titled, I have been hiding a secret from my wife. It says,
is it, oh gosh, looking back on an old story in the podcast, there was like the guy who was it hand knitted and finger knitted a blanket for his wife. It'd be funny if this was like his perspective of that story, because like that one was told from her perspective, like catching him doing it, but this is like, I don't know, I don't think it is, but it'd be really funny if it was like that funny. Or something like that.
Yeah, right. So this one says, at work, they started getting us cupcakes every Friday recently, and everyone gets to have only one. I never eat mine so that I can give it to my wife. She doesn't know that we only get one each. She just thinks I eat mine at work and I bring her an extra one or something, and I will never tell her. I want her to enjoy it peacefully. She has a sweet tooth, but we can't justify buying snacks currently, so we haven't had treats in a while. I love seeing her reaction when I whip out the almost squished muffin. It's really sweet. Sometimes she will unintentionally do this cute little dance, lol. I think it's the one joy in her life right now. I love her so much, and it makes me happy seeing her like that, so I will probably take it to my grave. Yeah.
That's sweet.
Right?
Now, do you think it's that he doesn't want it himself, and so then he's just giving it to her? Or is that he's making the sacrifice of, I would eat it, but I think my wife would want it more?
That's kind of how it sounds to me. Obviously, I don't know.
I'm going to assume it's that, because that's the sweeter version of it, and I like that.
I think that's what it is. But yeah, super, super sweet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our last Reddit story for today. This one comes from Tales from Retail, which I don't think I've had a story from on this podcast yet. They're fun.
I don't know. It's either been on this podcast or we've heard it on like Two Hot Takes or on Smosh Reddit Stories. We've either heard it somewhere on some other podcast or show, or it's been on here. It sounds familiar, but I like that it rhymes.
Yeah, it's cute. So this one is titled Some Good Old-Fashioned Wholesomeness. Anyone who has worked in retail for any period of time knows there is no end to the horror stories that come with the job.
Yep.
Though I myself have many such stories, what I'm writing about today is the story of a little boy I met at the beginning of my career. This is probably my favorite story to tell. Full disclaimer, the names used in this post haven't changed for obvious reasons. Also, this is going to be a long one, so here's the TLDR. Be kind.
Buckle up.
TLDR, be kind. You never know how it will impact somebody. All right, so it says, such a great helper. When I first started my job as a cashier, there was a single mom, Pam, who would shop every other day with her 10-year-old son, Gabe. Gabe was a very mild-mannered boy, very shy. One day, I'm ringing up their order, and Gabe shyly asks me, "Can I help?" It's a slow day and there's no one else in line, so with an approving nod between me and Pam, I say yes. I let him behind the register and I show him all the buttons. He scans a few items and puts them in the bags and is having an absolute blast. I didn't think much of it after that until a few days later. Before I punch in, my manager hands me an envelope. She said a customer dropped it off for me earlier that morning. Inside the envelope, there were 2 handwritten letters, one from Pam and one from Gabe. Gabe was thanking me for letting him help and said he had lots of fun learning how the register works and that when he grows up, he wants to be a cashier. I was just about on the verge of tears when I started reading Pam's letter. In it, she tells me about how much Gabe struggles with social interaction and that it was usually very difficult for her to get him into the store because he was easily overwhelmed by the noises and the people. But now that he has had a good experience, he just can't wait to come in. From then on, whenever Gabe would come in on my shift, he would have to come to give me a hug. He started carrying a notebook with him and would write little notes about the store and how it all worked. Fast forward 7 years. I've now become a front-end manager and have been put in charge of the Young Person's Career Training Class, a program we do every summer to train students who are about to graduate and who also have some sort of learning disability. And wouldn't you know, the first smiling face to greet me when I walk in the room is none other than Gabe. Throughout the summer, I trained the class on all the basics, and Gabe is soaking it up like a super sponge. He did so well that the store manager decided to hire him right outside of high school. And to my knowledge, now almost 3 years later, he is still there and is one of the best service clerks in the store. I count myself as being very blessed for the opportunity to watch this young, shy little boy turn into a charismatic, hardworking young man. I use my memories of Gabe and his progress as a reminder that no act of kindness is too small. Taking 5 minutes to be kind could literally change a person's life. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. If you have any wholesome or heartwarming stories of your own, feel free to share. I would love to read them. Have a wonderful day. Yeah.
I feel like it's also a nice reminder of like any career path can be aspiring in some way. Like I feel like retailers and customer service in general can be often looked down upon, as I'm sure OP has experience in their lifetime. But you know, especially for kids, like you don't know what the stigmas aren't around certain jobs and such. And it's like, oh, that looks cool, that looks fun, you know. And then it seems like that path worked out. So I'm glad that I wasn't like, yeah, their spirits were crushed after it was a Black Friday sale and like they never looked back. You know, fortunately it sounds like they're succeeding and you know, dream fulfilled to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this one also kind of lined up with our previous episode I think it was the last one, with the persevering through anxieties, with the little boy like being nervous with social interactions and being nervous of going to that store and then having that positive interaction with the cashier. And now he's excited to come in after doing that. So sometimes a good reminder too, that by pushing ourselves through, you know, nerves and stuff like that, sometimes you can find something that really excites you too. So that was a kind of a cool example of that as well. And awesome that he then was able to, you know, come back 7 years later and eventually get hired there and be able to do that job that he was super excited about. So super, super cool. On to our news article for today. This article comes from cbsnews.com and it is titled The Friendship Bench, Bringing Talk Therapy into Underserved Communities. This story is super, super cool. I'm hoping that this thing that they're creating continues to spread and becomes an even bigger thing than it already has, because I think it could do a huge wonder of good in the world if it did. So I'm excited to talk about it. So it was started by Dr. Dixon Chibanda, who's a psychiatrist based in Harare, Zimbabwe. And they started off with this idea because they had lost a patient of theirs to suicide and were really needing help themselves after dealing with the emotional loss of that. And they didn't know who to turn to. So they tried to turn to their family, but their family they lived about 200 miles away from where they worked, and they just didn't have the money to have them come and visit and stuff to be able to really help them out through that period of time. And at that time, to quote the article, there were only 10 psychiatrists serving 13 million people in Zimbabwe. So not a lot of options in terms of getting mental health, I'm sure, or there would probably be a long, long wait list.
I mean, it's tough in general, even up here in the Northland, like there's not a whole lot of access to
There's not.
to mental health resources in the state. There's some, but not as much as would be needed.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine in other communities around the world that it's a struggle.
Right. I'm hoping that can get better. I know like there's stuff like BetterHelp that's kind of popping up and stuff to have more remote options for getting help that way. But
then you
even still
need, but then you also need access to internet and technology.
Right.
And so a
Even
lot of
still,
communities in the world don't
scarce.
have that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, hopefully there can be more opportunities like this. This is a cool one. So that Shabanda had an idea of having grandmothers help out and being basically somebody to talk to for people. And so
Is it like rent a grandma?
Kind of similar, but without having to pay. So
rent a free grandma.
So to quote the article, Jubanda says, these grandmas were actually, the custodians of the local culture and the wisdom, and they were rooted in their communities. And I was like, what if we could train them to be the first port of call for anyone needing to talk in the community? So in 2006, they started the Friendship Bench, which is a talk therapy program where grandmas sit on the bench and are available to be able to talk to people that need it about anything and everything and to offer advice. The program is free and all of the grandmothers donate their time. So it's all free.
Just gotta go see if you see grandma on the bench, just sit down next to her and tell her your life story.
Yeah. So funny story. Initially, they actually called it the mental health bench, but nobody would sit on it. And they're like, it's interesting.
Probably
they didn't think
such a
about it because of the
stigma.
stigma. Exactly. And so one of the grandmas said, why don't we just name it the Friendship Bench? And then it became a huge thing and people started using it a lot. For the first while, it was 14 volunteer grandmothers the first year that were talking with several hundred visitors in that one area. And now there are over 3,000 listeners that give their time to do it and have served more than 300,000 people all over Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Dang.
So, yeah. Now,
it's a lot of grandmas.
It's like, to put in perspective, there's just under 300 million people that struggle with depression, according to the World Health Organization, and only about a third of them receive any treatment. So that gives a kind of a scope of how big the issue really is and how much of a disparity there is between the problem and how much access to resources there really are, because there's so many people that aren't able to receive treatment just because of the lack of availability. So
300 million people who have any kind of mental health
are struggling
or
with depression. Specifically depression.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. I was a little I feel like it'd be higher than that. Or people. No, then again, there's also probably a lot of people who just don't identify it.
Don't get diagnosed.
So that would be the people who are admitting that they are depressed.
Yep.
And getting treated for, or not getting treated, getting diagnosed for depression.
Right. But
and I think there's the number of people out there that just kind of no, I'm fine, I don't, or are in denial of it, or kind of hide it away. The number's probably much, much, much higher then.
Yeah. And another interesting fact, so according to a 2024 Gallup poll, they found that 1 in 5 American adults said that they were facing loneliness and isolation at the time of this in 2024 when they took the survey. So that's kind of crazy to think about. So feeling isolated and not feeling like they have people to talk to in their lives. So that's interesting too. But this Friendship Bench has kind of started to expand, and now it's in 9 countries and counting, including the US. In fact, there is one in Washington, D.C. right now that's been being used. Okay. So that's pretty cool. To quote the article again, somebody that was on one of the people on the Friendship Bench that was helping people, Teresa Kelly, says, "We don't solve problems for them. Sometimes you don't realize that you can be your own problem solver, and when they finish, we want them to leave empowered." So sometimes it's not even offering that advice, it's letting them talk through and figure out their own advice for themselves. Because I feel like that's really true, that sometimes you have the best answer for what's best for you, but you just need to be able to talk through it and kind of work through those things that are swimming around in your mind and figure out what it is that you need to do to move forward. And so being that soundboard, that person to go, okay, and how does that make you feel? And kind of let them just talk it through and come to that point of feeling empowered. I think that's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. An extreme comical version of that is on anyone who's watched New Girl. There's a series of Nick meets this old man on a bench, literally on a bench, and he famously just doesn't say anything. He just sits there with this,
Just smiles.
Smiles, and then it keeps doing like these quick cuts of Nick like talking about different like aspects of his life that just keeps getting more and more weird and stuff. Like it's just, and he never responds, like not with words anyways, and it's kind of, it reminds me of that a little bit, obviously in a real world sense, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Giving somebody that'll listen, that's really important. And another thing to note, like for severe cases, or serious cases, they will help refer them to professionals and stuff too. So it's not like they're forced to have to come up with, solutions and stuff in severe cases. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing to note. But
it's like step one.
It's step one, giving somebody a listening ears. That's really, really cool. Little part of the article that I think is kind of cute. So to quote the article, so what's the special sauce when it comes to grandparents? According to Chibanda, it is the natural abilities that come with having a long-lived life on this planet. They've seen a lot. They've experienced a lot. They have, the battle scars of life, which they bring to the bench. All we're doing as Friendship Bench is helping them to use those stories, those experiences to help others. What an inspiring story. I really hope that this can expand and continue to grow, because I think that's such a great idea. And I think there's so many people out there that don't have somebody to talk to, and having just somebody, a kind listening ear could really make a huge, huge difference. So I hope that this continues to grow. And with that, we will end today's podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next Wednesday, for our next episode, which is going to be all about cheering people up. We got some really sweet stories lined up for that one.
With the grandma?
Maybe.
I
don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Got to tune in to find out.
I guess so.
But yeah, if you have any positive stories, or you found hopeful news articles that you think would be awesome to be shared to the masses, please send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com, or you can post them on our subreddit, which is Uplift Positive Stories.
And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment.
That'd be awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
And stay positive.